let me talk first, just briefly, about the actual policy that Grass Lake has put in place. And let me see if I can get my thing going here. So, it was interesting. It's a little different. In Williamston, they had 7 or 8, 9 different policies that dealt with all these things, and they passed all of them through the school board. What's happening here is somewhat different. The Grass Lake School Board actually passed a policy, Board Policy 2260, back in 2014. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that this happened a while ago. And what they did in their policy that deals with non-discrimination and equal access to education, they said the Board of Education will not discriminate on the basis of protected classes of race, color, national origin, sex, and then they added in parentheses after the word sex, including sexual orientation and transgender identity, and added that language in. That's not in the law. If you look at the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, if you look at our Michigan Constitution, there's no parentheses, okay? It just says the word sex. And what has that meant traditionally in all the years that it's ever been interpreted, up until just recently in a few federal areas? And we'll talk about that. Under Title IX, it doesn't mean anything other than just male from female. Sex means biological sex. That's what it's meant. And now they're trying to change that. And in fact, the Grass Lake School Board actually added in sexual orientation and transgender identity. And then they went a little bit farther down in their policy and said, we're relying on a letter and some direction from the United States Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, which had issued a letter, and with their interpretation of Title IX, which is a federal law dealing with equal rights for women, for the most part, but for all people of whatever sex, again, male or female. And they took that and said, well, now it means beyond, more than that. It means these categories of sexual orientation, gender identity, those sorts of things. The only problem with that is that that letter no longer exists and was rescinded. So if anybody says to you, well, the U.S. Department of Ed has ruled, they have a letter. Well, to begin with, they have no authority to rule. They have no authority to tell school districts to do anything, okay? It was just a policy thing that they put out saying, well, here's our guidance to you, this is what we think it means, okay? But that doesn't even exist anymore because the Trump administration rescinded that letter. So it no longer exists. The next thing you hear is Title IX. And you'll hear, I've seen it in the Grass Lake information, we've seen it up in Williamston and other areas around the state. And they say, well, there's this 6th Circuit Court of Appeals case, Dodds, you know, and it says you have to allow transgender individuals to use the facilities, showers, locker rooms, bathrooms, for the sex with which they identify, okay? Again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into all the details of it. Bald-faced lie, okay? I can't be any clearer. It is a lie. Anybody who tells you the Dodds case said that, they're lying to your face or they're misinformed. One of the two, okay? You can read the case. It is not a final ruling. Again, I don't want to get into all the details. It was a ruling on a preliminary injunction early in the case on the appeal, and it maintained the status quo, affirming a lower court decision. It was not a final decision in the case. It's only binding on the parties to that case, okay? Now, we've written some issue briefs, position papers, fact sheets. There's a lot of it on the table out there. We go into a lot of the detail. Please pick up, you know, some of that information. You can read it for yourself. If you want to go to our website, greatlakesjc.org, you can go on there and click. We've got all kinds of information on there, way beyond just this issue, but all kinds of issues that are there for you to take a look at, and you can use that material any way you'd like to use it. Feel free. Another thing that is being relied upon for these new policies is the claim that the Michigan Department of Education is now requiring the school districts to do these things. And that they passed this policy back in 2016, I think it was May or June of 2016. Very similar to the letter from the federal Department of Ed. And said, here's the direction to the school districts, and so you have to allow transgender students to participate in sports of the opposite sex and the facilities and all these things. Again, read what the Department of Ed passed. And again, like William said, don't rely on what I'm telling you. Read it. Go there and read it. You guys can read English, and you can see who's telling you the truth. Are we telling you the truth, or is the ACLU and the Equality Michigan and those folks telling you the truth? Go and read it. Because guess what the first paragraph of this long document says from the Michigan Department of Education? This is not binding on any school district in the state of Michigan. This is only suggestions, and each board has to decide what they're going to do for themselves. Does that sound like something that's binding and the school board has to follow you? Of course not. And beyond that, that was passed 6-2 last year. Two of the main members of the school board, the Michigan School Board, got voted out of office last fall. And I think in large part because of their social engineering in passing that policy and suggested guidance to school districts. So right now, if this were to come before the board, it would not pass because there would not be a majority. It would be 4-4, and it would not pass. Now, they can't undo it because a motion to undo it would lose 4-4, okay? So the next election for the Michigan School Board, hopefully another 1 or 2 of those folks can be knocked out, and then this policy itself, suggested policy, can be taken out at the Michigan School Board level. So understand, Grass Lake passed a policy 3 years ago and put in place and added to the law, which begs another question. How does the school board, how does the local city, how does a township have the authority to change state law or change the state constitution by adding these categories? I would submit to you they do not. They don't have the authority to do that. Only the legislature does, or only the people do through a constitutional amendment. But that's another issue for another time. Now, there's more for what Grass Lake has done, but that policy number, 2260, from near as I can tell, looking at everything and going through their website, that's the only policy that the board has actually voted on and passed. So if you've seen these other statements, procedures, process, and all this kind of stuff, it's not clear. Where did this come from? Did the board do it? Did the superintendent do it? Did some committee do it? Is it just something the school district employees are doing? Who knows? Because they don't say in the policies. And in fact, they try to stay away from the term policy. For example, I don't know how many of you have seen this one, Grass Lake transgender statement. Okay? 2 paragraphs. You notice how it doesn't say Grass Lake transgender policy? Okay? Words matter, folks. Okay? It doesn't say policy because it's not a policy. But does that stop them from implementing this? Oh no. They're still going to implement it. But they're not doing it with the force and authority of the approval of the school board. So who did this? Who knows? I know some folks have asked the school board that question and they get no answer, which I find very interesting. Why would the school board not answer a question like that? Where did this come from? Who drafted it? Who, did the board vote on it? And they won't even answer? Well, we'll come back in a few minutes about what you can do about these things. But here, they've got this statement on transgender, and it said the board, now it does say the board, prohibits discrimination, bullying, harassment on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Now, bullying policies apply to everybody. When you read the general bullying policy at Grass Lake or any other school in this state, it prohibits bullying of anybody. Well, does that include an LGBT student? Does that include a Jewish student, an African American student? Of course, it includes everybody, doesn't it? So you have to ask yourself, Why do we have to add to a bullying policy that already covers everybody special protections or categories? Because there's more to it. There is an agenda here. There's an attempt to socially engineer and get acceptance of certain lifestyles and ways of living. Okay? And that's what's going on here, folks. So understand, there's no need for this under their bullying policies. And again, let me emphasize, no child should be bullied. If there's a transgender student in a school and getting bullied, that should be stopped. Why should any child be treated that way? They should not be. Take the policy you have and implement it, right? You don't need these special protections. And that's exactly what it is. It's special rights, special protections. And then they say it's important for the board to comply with federal, state, and local laws, board policy, legal precedent. And they make it sound really good, but when you start looking at what's underneath that, what cases, what precedent, what are they relying on? It's vapor. You know, it's fog, it's mist. It doesn't exist. It just sounds good. And then they say here they support the rights of transgender students and allow transgender students to use the bathroom and facilities, showers, locker rooms, whatever, that correspond to their gender identity. So here again, it looks like a board policy. And in fact, at the end of this statement, they use the word policy. Okay? But it's not headed as a policy, and there's no record anywhere in the Grass Lake website to show that they ever passed this as a board and passed it as a policy. So there's a real problem legally with that. Then they have this procedural statement. I don't know how many of you have seen this, where it goes on and they get into more. They talk about the Dodds case, as I mentioned. I won't waste time on that. But let me point out another thing. Not only is this policy, they call it a statement, but they're acting as if it's a policy, allows 17-year-old boys, biologically attacked boys, who identify as a girl, to go in and take a shower with your 14, 15-year-old daughter. Now, honestly, folks, honestly, if that doesn't shock your conscience, and if that doesn't just kind of go like, what? You know? I have to question where you're coming from. I am sorry, folks. You know? I'm 6'6", all right? I'm an old white guy, all right? If I get up tomorrow and say, you know what? I feel like a 5'6" Asian woman. And you know what? You better treat me like one. And you better let me in that women's locker room. And you better use whatever pronoun I tell you to use. I mean, do you see how ridiculous this is? Okay? And if you have the temerity to stand up and say that, you're a bigot. You're a hater. You're whatever. Okay? And again, this is not attacking a person. Nobody should be treated with disrespect. Everyone deserves dignity and being treated as a child of God. Everybody. And I think as a church, we've fallen down in that. Honestly, folks, we have. And I think we need to come to grips with that and how we treat people who we don't necessarily agree with. Tolerance doesn't mean you have to agree with somebody. Okay? Tolerance means you're willing to listen to the other side, discuss something, debate the issue, and you know, you might end up just disagreeing. You know? That doesn't mean you hate the person, doesn't mean you don't tolerate them. You tolerated and listened and debated. That's what our country's all about. And I gotta tell you, I take real offense at somebody saying, if you don't agree with me, you're not tolerant. I go, man, can you think? I mean, honestly, it gets kind of like, can you think? I mean, what are you talking about? How do you change words like that? Tolerance does not mean I have to agree with you. But that's what they're doing. So that's the first thing, the big problem with this policies that they're doing here in Grass Lake and other places around the state. It's just so you know, in Winston, we're getting ready to file a lawsuit. We'll have it filed within the next week, 2 weeks. It's going to be filed. I'm sure you'll be seeing it in the press. But there's a second big problem with this. They won't notify you as a parent of what's going on. Now here, they're a little bit more careful about it. They're very clever. They're very coy with it. Okay? They don't come right out. Williamson came right out and said, we're not going to notify the parents. And man, the parents went crazy. Like, what? You know, what do you mean you aren't going to notify us? So here they're a little more cagey about it. But if you look at this, guidelines for working with transgender students that Grass Lakes put out, there's 3 different spots. They have one that says notification process if the student is transgender or gender neutral, whatever that means. Listen to this. Quote, if a parent, guardian, and or student notifies the district's administration that the student is transgender, the school should, you know, request it in writing, and then it goes on from there. Now, did you hear what that said? Again, folks, English, read it. Okay? Parent, guardian, and or. Okay, so you know what that means? It means or. Right. Okay? Parent or guardian or student notifies. Catch that? All right? So a student walks in and just says, well, this is what I think. Don't tell my parents. They aren't going to tell you based on this policy. But they sit here and say to you, well, we say parent and legal guardian. Okay? But there's no requirement for them to notify you. In fact, this allows them not to. All right? The next one, nouns and pronouns. Talking about use of the pronoun and all of that that a student desires. And I don't know, I've heard there's as many as 150 different pronouns now. I mean, honestly, how is anybody supposed to keep up with that? I mean, I'm not going to try. And in California, you can go to jail if you're a healthcare worker and you don't use the proper pronoun. They can throw you in jail. You want to talk about hate speech? Man, why? But at the bottom of the noun and pronoun thing, listen to this. We have to inform teachers, support staff, coaches, and substitute teachers of the pronoun, blah, blah, blah. Do you see anywhere where it says inform the teachers, support staff, coaches, substitute teachers, and parents of the student's request for a pronoun? Do you see what's not there? So you have to read these things carefully, folks. The next page, right at the end, disclosures. Okay? The last paragraph. This is where they get a little more explicit. District staff shall not disclose information that may reveal a student's transgender or gender nonconforming status to others, including parents and other school staff, unless legally required to do so, or the student authorizes it. Guess what, folks? They're not going to tell you. Okay? Because the student is going to, you know, and the claim is always, oh, I'm afraid my parents are going to overreact, they're going to hurt me, you know. Seriously. If a parent overreacts and beats a child, or does, you know, there's laws to handle that sort of thing. You don't take away the rights of the other 99.9% of the law-abiding parents out there because of some hypothetical fictional parent who might treat their son or daughter inappropriately. Again, deal with it if they do. Okay? Don't take away my rights because of that. And then it says, unless legally required to do so. Now let me explain that to you. Do you know what that means? Unless the court orders them to. Okay? Or unless there's an explicit statute that requires them to tell you. Well, there aren't any statutes. This hasn't come up. All right? So they are telling you to your face, we will not notify you and we will not cooperate with you. And that violates Michigan law. Those of you who like to look things up, MCL, Michigan Compiled Law 380.10. It's a law that I had a hand in helping to draft over 20 years ago. And it requires school districts to cooperate and work with parents in the raising and educating of the children in the schools. Are they cooperating with you with policies like this? Absolutely not. Then there's this thing. Great deal of misinformation they put out, claiming that you're all just misinformed. And then they put out this thing talking about all kinds of things. They give, again, a lot of the same arguments, claims of legal precedent that don't exist. FERPA, I mean, honestly, folks, there's another one. Are you kidding me? FERPA, the the Privacy Act, okay? And they try to claim, well, we can't tell you because of FERPA. Wow, what a lie, okay? What you need to do, and here's a little tip, we'll throw it in for free, okay? Anytime a government official, state or federal, local, I don't care who it is, anytime any of them tell you, well, it's the law. I have to do this because it's the law. Do you know how you respond to that? Well, that's interesting. I've never seen that law. Can you quote that law to me? Can you give me the citation so I can go look it up? I can guarantee you 9 times out of 10 they're going to look at you like, nobody's ever asked me that before. Usually parents walk away with their tail between their legs because it's the law, you know. It's not the law, all right? Put their feet to the fire, make them show you what the law is, because that's not the case. And again, they talk about their policy and relying on the Dodds case and things like that. So, folks, what's in place here really undermines your parental rights and your right to be involved in your kids' growing up and their education. Again, we've got a lot of fact sheets, issue briefs. A lot of them are out there. You go to our websites. I'm not going to take a lot of time going through that right now. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What can you do about it? Let me just take a few minutes here. Give you a few suggestions. All right? Number 1, get ready. And being here tonight is part of it. Get ready. You think this is amazing, that who would have thought something like this would be happening in our town or anywhere else around the state or around the country? This is just the beginning, folks. You're going to see this in a lot of other areas. Of course, the Bible says in 1 Chronicles 12, we should understand the times in which we live and know what to do. Right? Do you understand the times in which we're living? As William laid out, how did we get here? It's educational, you know, informing yourself. Learn what's going on. So how can we get ready? Well, we need to pray for each other, first and foremost. Pray for the good for everyone, for all students. All students. Pray for those who disagree with us. Show them the tolerance they do not show us a lot of times. Now again, I'm not going to say all the time. There are many folks I've engaged with who disagree and do it appropriately. You know, we can have a discussion. So I don't intend to paint a broad brush here. But there are, you should see some of the emails and other stuff we get and curl your hair. You know, what we get sometimes. But what does the Bible say? We pray for those who oppose you in those ways. Pray for tolerance on all sides. People of faith have the right to speak up. It doesn't limit the debate when you speak up. It expands the debate. You have a right as a U.S. citizen to be involved and have your voice heard. That's not limiting the debate, it's expanding it. Understand that. It's important at all times to have the proper demeanor, folks. I can't emphasize this enough. You go to a school board meeting, you're talking to folks, if you start hitting people over the head with your Bible and, you know, you blankety blank this and you're going to hell and all this kind of stuff, I mean, honestly, folks, seriously, is that the way you think Christ wants you to act? Come on. And you're not going to win anybody over. There's this big middle, okay, where a lot of people are just kind of there. They instinctively think, oh, there's something wrong here, but I can't articulate it. I don't know why. And you stand up and say, oh, the blankety blanks here or whatever. They've turned you off. Just like that. Okay? Please don't do that. We're all children of God, as we've said. We're made in God's image. Everybody has value. Everybody deserves respect. I have no animus against anybody. But I will defend the truth. And when they try to start forcing me to deny the truth, I'm going to push back. And all of you should too. And we should all agree that we have the right to do that. And when you push back and do it in a proper way, it's not being hateful. It's not a microaggression. Okay? It's standing up for the truth. It just means you may disagree with somebody. Everyone has the right to speak, but do it in kindness, respect, empathy. You know what I mean. Okay? So get ready. Get informed. Educate yourself like we talked about tonight. Listen to what our opponents are saying. There is truth and what those folks, the LGBT community, and what they're saying and how they've been treated, there is some truth there, folks, okay? We need to be willing to accept some of that in the way we approach and interact and deal with folks. Don't be afraid to express your position. Read these policies, read these laws, know what's going on. Truth matters, reality matters. You know, these policies deny science. They do. They deny reality. You either have an XY chromosome or you don't, right?
Right.
Chromosomes are not social constructs. It's scientific reality. I find it so ironic that we're attacked if you don't believe, you know, climate change is as serious as everybody is. Oh, you're a science denier. And here, that's exactly what the folks, they're science deniers, okay? Truth matters. And we should not allow the government to use force or compulsion to force you to violate your conscience and reality as it exists, or deny reality. Think of this too. There are folks that have anorexia, right? Where they think they're obese. Are they obese? No. But what do? We all know what happens, right? Is that dangerous to them? Of course it is. Think of somebody with body dysmorphic disorder. Have you ever heard of it? It's where somebody believes they're ugly when they're not, you know, but they think they are. So they'll do all kinds of things to their body and mutilations and other stuff because they think they're ugly. How about those with body integrity identity disorder? You ever hear of that one? That's where somebody believes they're actually disabled when they really aren't. For example, they might think they're an amputee, like I don't have my left arm. But they have their left arm. But internally, inside, they believe they do not have a left arm, that their body is not, it's not true to them. Now you think about these things. These folks are in fully functional bodies. They have these disorders. Transgender, gender identity, is still, like it or not, is still defined as a disorder in the DSM. Now, would you ever think of treating somebody with anorexia or one of these things, yeah, go ahead, cut your arm off. You know, if that's what you truly believe, and that's your truth, go ahead, cut your arm off. You see how insane that is? And you know, if most children left to go through their teenage years and being treated as if their biological sex conforms to their gender identity, up to 95% of those kids, by the time they're out of their teenage years, have essentially grown out of it. And that's scientific studies and facts. Again, look at the information that we have out there, the American Pediatric, College of American Pediatrics. These are scientific studies that are there that you can look at for yourself. If these children are treated properly, the vast majority of them will not suffer with this for the rest of their lives. So the obvious question here, folks, Grass Lake, Williamston, and the other areas, do policies like these that are being proposed, do they really help these children? Who's being loving here? Who's being compassionate? Do you know the hormones that they give to folks to help them along the way in their transition cause things like sterility, cancer, all kinds of serious, proven medical problems? But yet, we're accepting, we just want to affirm what they're saying. Are you kidding? I mean, if I had a child that was struggling with something like this, I'd do everything I could to help them, and I'd work and help them get through it. I certainly would not give them hormones that are going to cause sterility and cancer. Is that a loving thing to do? I submit it is not. Get informed. Get organized. I'm going to have to go really fast here. I've already gone way beyond. We'll do the question and answer. But get organized. Tim's going to speak to that at the end here tonight and what you can do here in your community. Find areas of agreement, be proactive, provide information to others, those sorts of things. Support like-minded school board members as they run for election. 4, get engaged. We can talk through those things. Use social media. I know many of you are way better at that than me. Engage in your circle of influence, friends, family, work. don't be afraid to speak up on these issues. You'll find a lot of people, again, they can't articulate why they agree with you, but they do agree with you. And if they hear reasoned, logical arguments that aren't name-calling and, demeaning of anybody, that makes sense to them, okay? Don't be afraid to do that. Engage with Grass Lake School District and the school board. You're going to have many areas of agreement with the school. Work with them and support them in areas of agreement, right? There's no reason not to do that. So get engaged. Finally, get active, and I'll leave that for Tim to talk a little bit more about that. But some of the things you can do, getting involved with running people for the school board. If they're not going to change these policies, you can recall members. The Williamston folks are doing that. There's a court hearing tomorrow on their recall petition. One of the board members in Williamston has already resigned because they knew the recall was coming and they know they're going to get voted out in a recall. So he just resigned from the board. Run people at the regular elections for the school board. Legal action, that's another thing you can do, like we're doing in Williamston coming up here. And again, we ask you to help support groups like Great Lakes Justice Center. There's many other groups, Alliance Defending Freedom. There's many other groups out there that are doing these sorts of things. This is not just a battle in Grass Lake. This is a battle all across the country, folks. And when you're supporting groups like these, like us, you're helping not just here in Grass Lake, but all over the place. So be aware of that.